Tonight, sexism on the surgery table. A study finds doctors get less money for performing surgery on female patients than they do on male ones. And drought, heat, and grasshoppers. Saskatchewan farmers are struggling. Plus, one place where plants are blooming, Regina backyards. We take you on a secret tour.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It's Friday, July 21st. CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. Hello, and thank you for joining us. Sam McKeag is away this evening. A recent study found Canadian doctors who perform surgeries on female patients are paid significantly less than those who do similar surgeries on male patients. Here in Saskatchewan, that pay discrepancy appears to be the worst. CBC's Aishwarya Duda has more.
It is demeaning. It is demeaning to women.
Joanne Sievertson says despite being slightly desensitized to the issue of gender parity, the numbers are disappointing. Doctors in 8 provinces who perform reproductive and urologic procedures on female patients are paid 28% less on an average than those who do similar surgeries on male patients. Saskatchewan has the largest discrepancy at 67%, followed by BC at 61% and Yukon at 41%.
If you're paying surgeons more for biopsying male genitalia versus female genitalia, even though it's basically the same procedure, what does that say about how the government values the healthcare of our patients?
Chekhov calls it double discrimination. Female surgeons are paid less on an average, but surgeons who look after women are also paid less. In some cases, a similar procedure will be more difficult or dangerous on a woman, but still pay less.
To untwist a testicle, that's a procedure that's done outside the body. To untwist a ovary, you have to go into the abdominal cavity. So it's a much more risky surgery, a more complex surgery, and it is paid at 50% less than what detorting a testicle will pay.
Sievertson says this discrimination stems from historical policies. Care for women has been undervalued for decades, and pay increases are done by percentage. She says policymakers continue to perpetuate that undervaluation. The president of the Saskatchewan Medical Association says once the fee for a procedure is set at a low rate, it is hard for it to catch up.
It sends a message that perhaps women's health isn't as valued, and that needs to change.
EPP says the SMA plans to address and discuss the disparity issue through a lens of gender equality. The Saskatchewan Ministry of Health wouldn't comment on pay discrepancy and would only say doctors bill according to an approved payment schedule. Aishwarya Duda, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Regina's Northwest has become campaign central for the summer. Lawn signs are popping up and voters are greeting candidates on their doorsteps as a pair of provincial elections in neighboring constituencies approaches. CBC's Adam Hunter caught up with the candidates in the Regina Wall-Shakers riding.
Oh, McPhee got Marquardt with a big elbow, and look at this. Oh, wow. Baby.
Nevin Marquardt is used to a battle. He played 8 seasons in the NHL, mostly with the Boston Bruins. He moved back to his hometown of Regina recently, was trying to win a seat in the legislature in Regina Wall-Shakers, the area where he grew up.
I just feel like it's time to give back. I've had 3 very rewarding careers in the first 58 years of my life, and I do believe that they've prepared me to be a participant in the government and to help grow the province.
Following his hockey career, Marquardt was in the investment industry and more recently in cybersecurity. He says one challenge with the summer by-election is informing people that there's a vote happening.
It's a weird election. It's not the whole province, so you don't have the media talking about it every night. And so really, I've been out with the team for 4 or 5 weeks now, and it really is about awareness.
Hello, how are you?
Jared Clark is the NDP candidate hoping to win the seat back for the party, one it held consistently from the late 60s up until 2011. He says there's one thing on the minds of voters here:
Affordability right now is the #1 issue that we're hearing on the doorstep. People in Regina Walsh Acres are struggling to make ends meet. They're seeing that the Sask Party is not making choices that help their bottom line, that help them pay their bills.
Clark was born and raised in Regina and teaches with Regina Public Schools.
My commitment when I decided to run was that I was going to be an MLA, if I get elected, an MLA who shows up.
This political scientist says the timing of the by-election makes a traditionally tight constituency tough to predict. He says neither party can carry too much confidence into next month's vote.
It's not a regular election. Fewer people are going to vote. The timing is less than ideal. People are on vacation. They're at their cottage. They're wherever. They're not paying attention to politics in July and August.
Candidates have until next Tuesday to register with Elections Saskatchewan to get into the race. People in Walsh Acres can cast their ballot from August 3rd until the 10th. Adam Hunter, CBC News, Regina.
Yesterday, we told you about passengers up in arms over a Flair Airlines flight from Toronto that didn't land in Saskatoon because the only available runway was wet. The passengers were diverted to Winnipeg and asked to wait on the plane before it flew back to Toronto. That resulted in a 33-hour delay for other Flair travelers. The airline now says it will offer some type of compensation to passengers, but it hasn't specified what. One industry insider says Flair failed miserably on a few points, including blaming the issue on a rainy runway.
The fact that the runway construction was known well in advance, the fact that aviation weather forecasts are not a mystery, they're available to flight planners and pilots prior to them operating the flight. The fact that the delay was caused by Flair in the first place, which resulted in them operating during the time of the worst of the contamination of the runway with water, then, I just can't imagine how Flair would pretend that they do not owe compensation to these travelers.
Dee says Flair is obligated to compensate each of its passengers $500. The airline can also be on the hook for hotel, ground transportation, and meal expenses. Monday will mark 1 year since Pope Francis arrived in Canada to apologize for the harm that church-run residential schools caused Indigenous people. As Olivia Stefanovic shows us, the promise of that historic visit now rings hollow for many.
Ted Cusan says he's tried to stay optimistic, but 1 year after the papal visit, the residential school survivor is frustrated.
I really feel I've been used as an individual.
He says he's had no success in making a plan with the Roman Catholic Church on next steps.
Nobody has been in touch with me from the church, and it's rather disappointing.
Bernick presented Pope Francis with a handmade drum after he danced during his last stop in Iqaluit. A gesture to promote compassion, respect, peace, and harmony. Virtues Ernick says the Canadian Catholic bishops have yet to demonstrate to residential school survivors like him.
I am willing, Inuit are willing to move forward the healing and reconciliation with the church. It's your move.
The doing it is going to take some time as we meet with local chiefs, local communities. But already things are starting to unfold at the very local levels.
He says the bishops are working on releasing more residential school documents and raising $30 million promised for healing, with $20 million to go. He calls that encouraging progress, but others find it too slow.
Having an apology without action to help the current generations of the residential school survivors and their children is overall inappropriate.
Chelsea Brunel was among those demanding that the church rescind its doctrine of discovery, which justified colonial conquest. The Vatican has since repudiated the document. Brunel says it's not enough.
We still live in a colonial society, and we're still suffering.
She says an apology for the harms of the past should lay the foundation for a new future. But if the papal visit was the first step in that journey, she and many others are still waiting for the next step. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Ottawa.
BC's pork strike might be one step closer to ending again. The Dock Workers Union says it will recommend members accept a new tentative agreement to end the labour dispute with their BC maritime employers. The union's caucus will hold a meeting on Tuesday to put the new terms to its 7,400 members. If they accept, the threat of job action at dozens of ports in the province will be over. It comes after union leaders rejected another deal earlier this week. The strike began on July 1st, paralyzing shipping at major BC ports for 2 weeks and disrupting billions of dollars in trade. It's being called an agricultural disaster in some parts of Saskatchewan. Drought is straining growers and livestock producers across the province. Ethan Williams checks in with farmers as we look ahead to harvest.
2021 was a devastating year for Jeremy Welter's crop. His farm near Corrobert received very little rain, and this year is becoming the same story.
You know, there's some areas where the crops are, probably a week away from potentially being able to get into the field to harvest, except for the fact that there's nothing there.
He's not alone. Last week, the RM of Dundurn near Saskatoon declared an agricultural disaster because of drought. And the latest crop report shows grasshoppers are eating away what little crop there is in some spots. The Saskatchewan Stock Growers Association says cattle producers are also impacted. Its president saying some have been dealing with drought for several years in a row.
Most of us, we can always manage, a year or two of drought, but after that, it really becomes very difficult.
The SSGA is calling on governments to step up drought aid, and the province has responded by requesting an agri-recovery assessment from the federal government. That would help cover any extraordinary costs associated with disasters like drought. While Saskatchewan isn't faring as bad as parts of Alberta, drought conditions as of the end of June show parts of our province in dark brown are in severe drought. That's a 1 in 10-year drought event. And topsoil is very short of moisture in spots as of earlier this week, especially in the province's west. May and June were consistently hot and dry for many after a winter with below-average snowfall. Now, an El Niño weather pattern with its warmer than normal Pacific Ocean temperatures could keep the trend going.
Especially moderate to strong El Niños, we know over Western Canada for the winter period, it tends to bring warmer than average temperatures and below average precipitations.
And this next week's forecast calls for exactly that in the southern half of the province. Very little rain and 30-degree temperatures, but many producers with their crop already ruined are setting their sights on next year. Ethan Williams, CBC News, Regina.
Moviegoers in Regina might be disappointed if they were hoping to watch Oppenheimer as the director intended. Director Christopher Nolan's new movie about the Manhattan Project opened yesterday. He shot the movie on film, specifically for IMAX film projectors. There are only 30 of those on Earth, and one of them is at the Saskatchewan Science Centre here in Regina. But the centre ran into trouble. The kilometers of film weren't processing through the projector correctly.
As they were starting to do that and power up the system, things were not working, and then there was error messages. So much like with your desktop computer, if something went wrong, you'd get an error message, and that's what was happening. So they were troubleshooting each of the error messages as they arose, and we now have hopefully had the system resolved.
People can still watch the movie on a laser projector in the meantime, but a laser projector isn't why people traveled from as far as Finland. Baumgartner says people can reschedule or get a full refund if the film issue isn't resolved. Well, here's one field of crops that's looking like it's weathering the drought. Stay with us. We'll bring you your weather forecast for the weekend after the break. The Saskatchewan Roughriders are ready for a litmus test in their Week 7 matchup. They're off to BC to face the Lions, one of the top teams in the CFL. The Riders are beaten down by injuries, but still managed a 3-2 record. They're looking to bounce back from a tough loss to the Calgary Stampeders last week. Meanwhile, the Lions are 4-1. They boast the best defense in the league and an elite passing game. The Riders know Saturday's game will be a measuring stick.
That's a good football team, and they've certainly showed well in all three phases. So our guys know it's a big challenge. Our guys know it's going to be one of those games where probably not a lot of people are picking us to win. This certainly will tell us where we're at. We want to have a good outing. We want to be competitive and have a chance to win at the end. So we'll see what happens. We've had, like I said, a good week, and we expect to be in this game. We expect to win it.
Tomorrow's game between the Rough Riders and the Lions kicks off at 5 p.m.
This weather update is brought to you by Titan Automotive, proud member of the Capital Automotive Group.
Ethan Williams joins us now with a look at the weather. Ethan, your story earlier certainly made me concerned for farmers. So what does the forecast have in store for those of us who aren't working out in the fields?
Well, if you're in southern Saskatchewan, Natasha, it is going to be a hot weekend and even hotter heading into the beginning of next week as well. And we do have heat warnings in place for south central and southwestern Saskatchewan, including places like Moose Jaw and Swift Current. A few consecutive days here where temperatures during the day are going to be warmer than 32 degrees and those overnight lows warmer than 16 degrees. In fact, a couple of nights not much below 20 degrees. Another thing that's really been persistent is the smoke in northern Saskatchewan. Still looking at those air quality advisories for the smoke, but as we go through the next few days, we are going to see that diminish. I'll have more on that in a second, but first we'll start with the heat. And the reason for this is this big arcing ridge that we have in the jet stream and all of this warm air that's been bringing extreme heat to the southern U.S., including in Phoenix, Arizona, where it was 45 degrees today. That's their forecast for the next few days. And as we head through the next few days, I don't think our temperatures are going to get quite that warm in the heat warning areas, but you see this ridge is now all the way into the Beaufort Sea above the Northern Territories, and things could get as warm as 38 Celsius in Swift Current on Monday. That at least is the forecast high for that city, and Swift Current already warming up today, getting to 28 degrees. A couple of us getting above 30, including in Maple Creek and Coronach, and you can see mid to upper 20s in a lot of south and central right now. A bit of severe weather as well. We had some cells once again moving through the Meadow Lake area. You've had a few of those over the past little while here. And a severe thunderstorm warning now for the RM of Buchanan for this cell that is now just moving into Kenora. Some nickel-sized hail and heavy rain there. That's going to be moving out as we head through the night, but we could see some fog develop in much of south and central, and then high pressure begins to move in, moving that out. And we could see some thunderstorms again popping up like we did today in south and central, but really not a whole lot of activity as that warmth starts to move in. The threat through south and central quite low, only a 1 out of 4 risk tomorrow, with similar threats that we've seen over the past few days. But with high pressure in place, really not too much in terms of winds either these next couple of days. Not even really a cool breeze moving through. Even if a breeze did move through, it'd probably be pretty warm. The smoke moving southward into the Churchill region tomorrow, but then you see it begin to dissipate here. Could be some relief heading into next week in terms of smoke for northern Saskatchewan. For Regina, though, it's just going to be all about the heat. Really the crux of it early into next week with a little bit of humidity feeling into those upper 30s at times. A bit of relief heading into next week, but not by much. Saskatoon, again, you're a little bit further north, so not really going to be seeing a whole lot of the heat that Regina's getting, but still nonetheless a couple of 30-degree days in there, maybe some showers Wednesday, and then those temperatures, especially overnight, going to be coming down as well. So it will be short-lived, Natasha. By the time we get into next week, we should be seeing more seasonal conditions.
Okay, thank you for that, Ethan.
You're welcome.
155 years ago, golden retrievers were first bred in the Scottish Highlands. To mark the occasion, hundreds of good girls and boys joined in the festivities in Gushkin. The 6th annual gathering in the breed's ancestral home attracts humans and their pups from more than a dozen countries. We'll be back after the break. Legendary American singer Tony Bennett has died at the age of 96.
I left my heart in San Francisco.
The crooner was best known for his devotion to classic American songs, beginning with his signature hit in the early 1960s, I Left My Heart in San Francisco. Bennett made more than 70 albums and won 19 Grammys over his career. He recorded with everyone from Frank Sinatra and Lady Gaga to Canada's Katie Lang and Diana Krall. Bennett was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease in 2016. His publicist says he died in his hometown of New York. And Ethan is back with another look at our weather as we head into the weekend.
Definitely a hot one, Natasha. Already at 19 tomorrow morning in Regina. Light winds, mainly sunny skies. Those will be sticking around as we head toward the afternoon. Feeling like 30 likely by the time we hit the noon hour. Saskatoon a bit smoky tonight, but then we should clear out by tomorrow morning again. Looking for similar conditions. Again, feeling like 30 degrees. Chance of thunderstorms in both Regina and Saskatoon tomorrow afternoon. And keep in mind that if you are in Regina, the extreme weather strategy is in place, so there is bottled water available at fire halls. There's also fire hydrant water stations at several city parks, and there is also the Safe Bus program and cooling stations, all of that available on the city's website, Natasha, so that way people can stay safe this hot weekend.
Great advice. Thanks, Ethan.
You bet.
If you love checking out the magic other people make in their gardens, you might enjoy a secret garden tour. 13 gardens are being highlighted in Regina's 24th annual Secret Gardens Tour. Doug and Wanda Brentnell own one of them. The couple says they started out with a pretty basic yard, but over the past 32 years, it's blossomed into an oasis. Take a look.
She's the gardener, I'm the builder guy.
Got it.
So it started with her.
Actually, it was by the back door. I had a little garden in there that kind of got me going. I think we had raspberries out on this side, and we'd used old railway ties, and they ended up leaking oil.
So you can't use them
there. You can't use them for gardening or anything like that. So we found out sort of the hard way, and I'm retired now and working on the garden just to have it in the show. I've been getting up and coming out about 5 a.m. in the morning, and it does take a lot of work because you want it to look nice, so you do some extra special things, but it is just losing yourself. You don't really think about anything else. Every year or so we do kind of a big project, and then in between, put more perennials. And
I like to see things reused, and a lot of stuff in our house has been repurposed. It has, right from the garden shed, 1910 Eaton's house. Even this structure, probably 70% of it is recycled stuff. To me, these two windows, I'd say, are the magical windows. They were bought 5 years apart. They were marked on the sides 1870 or 1880 Lipton Lumberyard, and they're the original wood frame church at LeBret before the stone church, I believe.
There was a fella in Montreal that was selling palm trees, and he gets them from Florida. I guess the interesting thing is, though, is that he's wintering them outside in Montreal to prove that it can be done.
A daylily only blooms once. Did you know that?
One day.
One day. And the other blooms, and it's just like nature's fireworks. They just keep popping. People need to get out into more of nature. They need to walk around the yard with their shoes off. They need to get dirt on their hands. And I think they need to embrace yard gardening and everything. I really do.
You can check out the Brentnell's Garden and 12 others tonight through Sunday. The tour is a fundraiser for New Dance Horizons. Well, that's it for us. For news anytime, head to cbc.ca/sask. Ethan and I will be back with more local news at 11. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.